All right, here we go for Module 9, Environmental Studies. So, as always, start with the warm-up. Pause the video, do the warm-up. Once you've done that, in this module, we're going to learn about the nitrogen, well, we're going to review the nitrogen cycle, which we learned about last week in Module 7. And then we're going to take notes on fossil fuels. So we're going to learn about fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas so that we can understand how they fit in with the carbon cycle, which is Module 10. So let's start with this quiz here. So this is not an actual quiz, it's just like a worksheet, and you're going to click on this link and open up the nitrogen cycle interactive. Okay, so read this. It gives you a good reminder of why nitrogen is important. Then we have all these different parts that move nitrogen around in nature. Now notice, first right off the bat, that at least half of this diagram is under the soil. Most of the nitrogen cycle happens in the soil. And all of these little things, these are bacteria. So bacteria is extremely important when it comes to the nitrogen cycle. It's basically all the different steps except for animals and plants and the atmosphere. So the things that need it and where it's stored. Everything else happens with the help of bacteria. All right, so I urge you to press play and then use the pause button each time the nitrogen moves through a step. So what you're doing on this quiz is you are putting these things in order. You're figuring out the sequence. So first, the nitrogen starts in the atmosphere. That's step 1. So what is step 2 called? So you press play to move it to that one step, and then you get nitrogen fixation, and you have a little description of that. Okay, so you're going to choose here then nitrogen fixation. Now, you work through steps 3 and 4, but a lot of people got messed up when they got to step 6, 7, and 8 because it doesn't follow the order of this simulation. So look right here. This would be step 5. And step 5, there's 2 pathways. And well, actually, this is step 4. Step 5, there's 2 pathways. So it can either go this way to denitrification, or it can go this way to assimilation. Well, I put assimilation, so I want you to follow the path to assimilation. So don't get mixed up on that. Take this route, goes around, and comes back out of the soil. Okay, so pause the video and see if you can get all of these right. All right, good job on that. Submit that quiz, and the next part of the module is notes about the fossil fuels. So go ahead and click next. And then you have a page of notes to open up. Click on this, make a copy, and move it to your Unit 1, the Earth folder. All right, so the first part of these is a video, and I highly recommend that you pause and watch this video. It's short, but it talks about pretty much everything that we are going to learn in this class. Really, really does. So I highly encourage you to watch this short video. Okay. So fossil fuels, here's your definition you're going to put in the notes. They are a group of energy sources that were formed from ancient plants and organisms during the Carboniferous period, approximately 360 to 286 million years ago. So it's a long definition, but every part of it is important. So first, fossil fuels, we use them for energy. They're energy sources today. They were formed from ancient plants and organisms, which is why they get the name fossil fuels, because they originally were living things. Now they're very different from living things, but originally they were plants and other living things, organisms. And all of these fossil fuels date back to a period in the Earth's history called the Carboniferous. And we actually call it that because fossil fuels are mostly carbon. And in this period in Earth's history, hundreds of millions of years ago, there was tons of carbon in the living things that covered the Earth. And there still is carbon in living things. Carbon is a huge part of us. We're going to learn that in Module 10, but the Carboniferous period, it was named that because of all the carbon we now have in fossil fuels. So there's three types of fossil fuels: coal, oil, and natural gas. Solid, liquid, and gas. So we're going to talk first about coal. Coal is used for three things. Well, it's used for many things, but these are the three biggest ones. Generating electricity is a huge one. A lot of coal power plants that make electricity. Making steel is another important one because steel is the basis for all of our buildings and houses. And then just industry in general. So factories and things like that, they use coal as a source of fuel. All right, so how did coal form? Well, back in the Carboniferous period, there were ancient plants in swampy areas, so there were a lot more swamps on Earth back then. Eventually those things would die, and then they would fall, and then they would be kind of smashed down, smushed down, and buried under layers of rock. So step 2, they were buried. Once they were buried, they were under a great deal of heat and pressure, and it took an incredible amount of time. So forming coal from all that is a slow process. All right, what about oil? So oil has even more uses than coal, because we can use oil we can extract different parts of it to make various materials. We can also burn it to be a fuel. So the main source of fuel is for vehicles. Gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, all of that comes from oil, which another name for it is petroleum. So it's not cooking oil. We wouldn't want to cook with this. It would taste disgusting. Plastics. Everything plastic is a product of petroleum. Cosmetics. Things like Vaseline, chapstick, lipstick, mascara, anything kind of oily that we use in makeup. Ink, pen ink. Asphalt, so like what they use to pave driveways and parking lots. The list goes on and on. So how did petroleum form? Well, it's basically the same thing as coal, but it started as underwater organisms. So ancient aquatic organisms died, fell to the bottom of the sea, and then were buried under sand and other layers of rock. And then the same step as coal. Lots of heat, pressure, and time. All right, what about natural gas? So natural gas is used mainly for heating homes and businesses. You also might have a gas burning stove for cooking. It's also increasingly used for generating electricity today because it produces less pollution to burn natural gas than to burn oil and coal. Also, this can be used to make plastic as well. The formation is pretty much the same as petroleum. Starts off as underwater organisms, marine organisms, buried, and then pressure and heat and time. The only difference is more pressure and more heat. All right, so that's it for your notes on fossil fuels. In our next module, we're going to cover the carbon cycle.